Hey, welcome back. I'm your host, Eric, and we're tackling some big issues, right? We're trying to bridge the gap between emotional health and spiritual maturity. I got Pastor Wes Kennedy here from New Life in Montgomery. Thanks for being here, man. And we got something we're going to talk about. It's pretty big, right?
Yes, very
Yeah?
much so.
You can almost hear it around the world.
Oh, right now, yes.
Yeah. Right now, there's a huge moment in time, right? Everybody's staring at Will Smith and Jada and their family because of what he did at the Oscars, right? And
Yeah.
he got up on stage and slapped Chris Rock in the face in front of everybody in a fit of rage or anger, right? And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about anger.
And what's interesting is some people are for it, some people are against it, trying to dissect what was behind it, what it accomplished. But the big thing to notice is it's defining him right now. That moment of anger is defining him. Much like some of you all remember, some of our listeners will remember Zidane, amazing soccer player, but in that World Cup where he headbutted that Italian player, that was what defined his career.
Yeah.
It's like these moments of anger become what people are remembered for.
Yeah.
So
Which
big
makes
deal.
it a big deal, right?
Very much
I mean,
so.
we're talking about emotional health and then anger, right? I mean, I got to be
Mhm.
honest, man. It takes me very little to get angry when I'm driving down the I-55. You know, It's-
For all of us, given the right conditions, it will take very little to make us angry.
yeah. Oh man. So this one hits a little bit, to home. And if you've ever had a toddler throw themselves on the floor in like a
Hmm.
supermarket, you know what anger feels like, um, or embarrassment, one of the others, But what? Why would you say when we talk about anger? Why do we get angry?
Short answer, because we're created in the image of God.
Mm,
Now, that is strange to say and strange to hear, but even in Scripture, we see that God is slow to anger, but God gets angry, which means that even though in our experience of it, it causes wars, it causes divorce, it causes all kinds of rupture in relationships, there is something about anger. There is a part of anger. There is a way to experience anger that is actually godly.
yeah. So is anger sin? I know many people are going to be thinking, "Well, is it? It's a sin to get angry, right? You're not supposed to get angry. You're supposed to be nice and calm and peaceful, and the perfect parents who don't overreact or get upset when their child does something,
Mhm.
foolish at 3 years of age or 23 years of age, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be calm, cool, and collective, and you never get upset, never get angry. And is that true?
No, Paul says, in your anger, do not sin. In other words, care about something enough to get angry about it. What you care about matters. But
Mm,
if we don't get angry, it means we don't really care.
mm,
In our first episode, we talked about those who indulge their emotions and those who ignore them completely. And like you just really accurately described, sometimes we think of spiritual maturity as, oh, just living kind of disconnected from the neck down.
yeah,
Nothing's going to bother me. It's all good. Oh, I'm sick. Rejoice in the Lord.
yeah.
Oh, I just got cut off in traffic. Rejoice in the Lord.
Gonna pray for you.
Oh, I just, lost my job. Rejoice. Like we're not allowed to
Mm,
feel. And that's wrong,
yeah,
and that includes all kinds of uncomfortable emotions,
yeah.
but in this case, anger.
So it's good to it's there can be a place where anger is godly, but there's also a place where anger can be um ungodly,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where it overtakes you, right? And when anger stays, I'll use the word flooded in you, right? That can lead to some very harmful places, I would say. So there is a difference, right? And the Bible talks about it in two ways. There's a righteous anger, right?
Yeah.
And then there's an unrighteous anger,
Yeah.
right? And obviously God is righteous, and so He is holy, He is perfect, and so His anger is perfect. Even in times throughout Scripture where we saw it's written in Scripture that God does get angry,
Mm-hmm.
right? As you said, as He's slow to be angry, but What's the difference between righteous and unrighteous anger?
Yeah, and some of the language that I'm going to use is from Dan Allender. He's the real deal. He's
Yeah.
a licensed psychologist, PhD, and has his master's of divinity. So he's got a great book, Cry of the Soul,
Yeah.
that we can link in the show notes. But some of the language I'm going to use, admittedly, comes from him. But anger always wounds. And the difference between godly and ungodly anger is the reason that it wounds. Ungodly anger wounds for revenge.
Hmm.
It wounds because we want to get back at. We want that person to feel what we felt. We want to just wound it to hurt. Godly anger wounds to redeem. So ungodly wounds for revenge, but godly wounds to redeem. In other words,
Give me an example of that.
I will. Yeah. In other words, when someone gets mad at when my wife gets mad at the way that I speak to her because I'm being a jerk, and she calls that out in me, she's mad about it, rightly so, and she is making me uncomfortable by calling that out. That's a wound, but she's doing it in a way to help me grow.
Mm.
If she's doing it out of godly anger.
Right. Which she always does. Well,
of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's not the spontaneous reaction. Jesus didn't walk into the temple and say, what's going on here, and lose it. He was there day in and day out, day in and day out. And finally there was a moment where it wasn't flying off the handle and losing his cool, but acting in righteous anger. He was wounding there in order to bring about order, in order to redeem. Ultimately, the picture's the cross. God the Father wounds, the full wrath of God against sin is poured out at Jesus on the cross. Jesus is wounded, crucified, died. But he's a wounded healer. I mean, it's wounded in order to redeem.
Yeah. That's great. That's really great. So we're bringing it down to the granular level here, right? You brought up about your wife, and maybe she's pointing something out in you. How do you know when you're angry, right? Because we all get angry, so we know that anger is not bad. Anger can be godlike, right? Because God himself gets angry. And there's a difference. There's a righteous anger, there's an unrighteous anger. And how do we know that when we're angry, what kind of anger we have? What are some of those qualifiers? You may not think in the moment, I'm angry because I want to wound you so you can heal, right? You may not put language to that, but how does that come out when you're with your spouse, or when you're trying to reprimand your child? Your child does something terrible, a very poor decision, and not as a toddler, but as like a high schooler, right? A junior in high school or senior in high school, and they make a big mistake, right? That makes you angry. How do you know what kind of anger you have?
Yeah. It takes cooling down enough to begin to get the thinking part of our brain back online. And we can talk about some really simple strategies of how to do that. But once we're there, it's really asking ourselves, what am I defending? And what am I valuing? In other words, when I'm mad at a child, am I mad because this is so embarrassing to me right now? Or am I mad and grieved that the character of God is not yet in this child? And how can I help this child? It's going to completely change my response to recognize, am I just reacting because I'm so embarrassed right now? Stop it. Be quiet. Right? We're going to be late, right? Whatever it is. Versus, no, this has to do with a character thing. If it has to do with a character thing, then that's going to change my response. And so I'm mad, but it has to do with character, not my embarrassment.
Yeah. You're familiar with the term flooding, right? When it comes to emotional flooding, where you kind of just think of yourself as like a glass pitcher, and you're just filled with emotions in the moment, where you almost get tunnel vision. And this doesn't just apply to anger. This can apply to sadness. This can apply to anxiety. We'll get into those in other episodes. But specifically with anger, right? When it comes to, um, yeah, like being able to decipher, okay, is what I'm angry about righteous? Or is this a righteous anger or this an unrighteous anger? I may not be able, what you're saying is I may not be able to clarify that in the moment, but maybe once I've kind of deflooded a little bit to be able to think about it. It's almost as if when you're flooded, you get tunnel vision, right? And I know this has been true for my own life, right? When I'm upset or angry, you sometimes all you can do is focus in on that one thing. It's like you've lost all peripheral. You don't see anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes the self-soothing, which kind of goes back to our attachment again, right? To be able to calm down, self-soothe, to ask what you said, what am I defending and what am I valuing?
Yeah.
To bring clarity to why I'm upset.
Yeah, and now we know literally what happens in the brain when our limbic system, which is the emotional control center, is activated. It's going to be stronger than the rest of us, which is why some people get angry and see red.
Yep.
And all of the executive functioning, which just means our ability to problem solve and think through, is this a good idea or not, goes completely offline. And so what we need to do is we need to cut the signal. We need to take a moment to cut that signal in order to bring our rational thinking back online. So if I'm seeing red, if I'm totally taken over, then we can do this physically with our body.
Mm-hmm.
And I all the time with clients, it sounds ridiculous, but literally taking a deep breath, like to the bottom of our diaphragm and our torso, sends a signal. We know this scientifically now. It sends a signal up through the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems to the brain that essentially say, hey, it's okay, calm down, slow down. Yeah. And that millisecond or that couple seconds can literally mean the difference between what you're remembered for and your wise response. It sounds ridiculous. A breath, breathing. We know the science behind it now.
And isn't it interesting, like going back again to early childhood development, a child hurts themselves and, they're riding their bike or whatever and they fall and then they get the wind knocked out of them. And what do you tell them to do? Right? They're inconsolable. You tell them, breathe. It's okay. Breathe.
Yeah.
You're teaching them to self-soothe. You're teaching them to calm down. Here, drink a glass of water, like do these things. And it's funny how those things that we're taught as a child are the things that we forget to do as adults, right?
There was a woman, and actually the people from Connected Families tell this story. We mentioned that in the previous episode, but there was a woman who knew that at a certain hour every day, her kids acted up, and she was sick of reacting because she just knew that she did not honor God in her reaction, nor was she helping her children become who God wanted them to be, in terms of their character and development. So knowing that at this certain hour, this certain transition, she always went over the top, what she decided to do beforehand was to respond physically. We talked in our first episode, emotions are first manifest in the body before we're even aware of them. It's then that we say, oh, I got a knot in my stomach, or oh, my palms are sweaty. So in order to respond and not just react, what she did is she actually put on workout clothes first thing in the morning, and they did their morning routine. And right about 10 o'clock or 10:30 or whenever it was that her boys acted up, as the temperature was rising, as they were doing what they did, she literally started doing burpees. You jump up, touch the ceiling, then put your feet back and do a push-up. And they're like, what the heck are you doing, Mom? She's like, I just needed a moment to calm down so I can respond to you all wisely. And then she did 5 more. And it's a brilliant story because knowing what we know about emotions in our body, sometimes just the physical activity or physically walking to another room and counting down from 10 or just breathing or doing burpees is enough to cut that signal so that we're not just reacting, but we can respond.
And that's so huge, right? I've heard it said, animals react, bombs react, right? We should respond. There's a difference between that, and one's more impulsive, right? and the other is more thought through.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want. When it comes to our anger, it's not don't be angry. It's
Yeah.
don't sin
Yes.
in your anger.
Yeah. Ultimately, our spontaneous reactions, we want to be like Jesus. Right? Yeah. But until we're there, let's cut the cord.
I'm not there
the
yet.
signal
I'm not
take
there
a
yet.
moment to literally just calm down.
Yeah, literally calm down. And it's so true. So true. You know, but really, when we think about anger, right? And I don't think there's a person in this world who hasn't dealt with anger at some point, rather. I think about the hardest things in life, right? The loss of a job, maybe unfairly. Somebody steals your idea, right? Takes credit for something that you did. Man, that would infuriate you, and rightly so. And how do you deal with that? The classic, my brother wore my shirt to school and stained it, like whatever.
That happened to you, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
And way worse.
You know, brothers do crazy things, right?
You're dealing with it well.
Yeah. I took a moment there, and I didn't react or throw my brother under the bus. But anger is not the bottom of the barrel.
Mm-mm.
A lot of times we think it is, right? I'll get over it, right? I was angry and then I got over it. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. Like, you didn't get over it, especially if you didn't deal with it.
Yes.
Right? And anger is not the bottom of the barrel. Why don't you talk to us about that?
I see this a lot in the professional field that I'm in. People are referred from court to anger management classes for a variety of different reasons. And anger management is good. We just talked about taking a moment, whether it's physically, whether it's, cognitively, whether it's just doing some other activity to calm down so that we don't react but respond. Anger management is good, but ultimately that's not what heals us. And in order to get there, we need to see what's under our anger. I know we've talked before about this, but anger really is a secondary emotion. In other words, there are a lot of roads that lead to anger, because it's easier to feel and express anger than to deal with some of those deeper things. And just to give you an idea, we may be grieving, but it comes out as anger.
Yeah.
We may feel incredibly lonely, but it comes out as anger. Teenage depression often looks like anger. We may have a conflict in a relationship and actually feel disrespected, which isn't a feeling, it's an interpretation.
Right.
But that, rather than dealing with the disrespect, we just get angry, and all of these things are very, very different, but look like anger. And so, yes, we want to, as I say, sort of cut the signal so we're not just blowing our gasket, either towards others or ourselves.
Yeah.
Whether it's self-cutting or isolating or crying, right? So we don't just react. We want to cut that. That's anger management. But ultimately, to heal, we need to ask ourselves before God, what's under my anger? Am I just sad?
Yeah.
Not just, but am I actually sad?
Yeah.
Am I grieving still this loss? Do I feel lonely? Because that's where we can do the real work, and where God gets to do the real work.
Yeah. So anger is that secondary emotion. It's like the light on the dashboard that says you need to open up the hood because there's something wrong.
Yes.
It's coming out as a light, right, on the dashboard blinking. What's that there for? And I think that's so important because a lot of times, people learn to cope in unhealthy ways that kind of look like they've dealt with it, but they haven't.
Well said.
Until some random person in a totally different situation just happens to do something similar to something that was done to them before, and it unearths all of this in a rage, right? And now this person is being projected on all of this anger from all of this past hurt that had nothing to do with them necessarily. It had everything to do with something that happened when they were a teenager or in their previous marriage.
That happened just yesterday. I was frustrated about a few different things, and at night I got home and I told Belen, my wife, I'm frustrated right now. It has nothing to do with you. And by the grace of God, I was able to recognize, it was this ticket that I got a couple months ago, and this other thing that happened, and be able to, like, in a lot of ways, we defuse something that could have gone really bad by just saying, this is what's going on with me right now because of these things, and it was a baby step.
Yeah.
Baby step towards not spewing volcano on my family,
Yeah. And is that the worst? Like it's the law of unintended consequences, right? Where if you don't deal with anger, there will be collateral damage. There will be others that have nothing, your children, right? Your spouse, your coworker, your family member, where you will react, and when things react, they go off and they hurt people, right? Anger harms, as you said. I think that's so important. But if you don't deal with it in a godly way, it's not just like, hey, stop being angry. That's not the answer. The answer is not just stop being angry.
Yeah.
Right. It's understand why you're angry. Don't sin in your anger. Those are things that we can do. But you may have a very real reason to be angry, a legitimate reason to be angry, something that also would make God angry. Yeah. Right? That you're actually resonating with his heartbeat on something. You just don't know how to express that.
Yeah. I would say if we don't get angry about certain things, that's a problem.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Abuse of children or mistreatment of women. Like there are some things that we should get angry about.
Yeah. But
it's all in what we do with that anger.
Yeah. What are some resources? What do someone's watching right now and they're listening to this, you're like, man, yeah, I need to check under the hood. I need to what are some things that you would point them to?
Yeah, years ago, a group focused on the family put together a few short blogs on it. Those were really helpful for me. We can put the link in the show notes there. Honestly, I would encourage anyone who is dealing with anger to find some trusted people in their lives, whether that's a small group or a mentor, and do the work to look under the anger. What's under? Because there's always something under the anger. So yes, there are books, and we're gonna resource you all. We are talking about these things, but ultimately it's underneath the words. It's in the actual biology and the brain circuitry where we want God to heal us. And so being able to lean into those relationships and get under the anger, being able to acknowledge what it is that's going on. You know what? I haven't grieved the loss of this person in my life.
Yeah.
As pastors, I feel like there's so much anger sometimes that's directed at us that has nothing to do with us or the church.
What do you mean?
And it makes sense. We're only, people are only human, but until we do the hard work of figuring out where is this coming from, we're not going to be healed. We can get good at managing it or decent at managing it, and that's important.
Or masking it.
But we ultimately want to allow God to heal us.
And that's what we're talking about, right? We're trying to bridge the gap between emotional health and spiritual maturity, where you're not masking it. That's too much. That's more work, right? We don't want to just mask or hide or treat a symptom. We want to heal the source. We want to heal what has been broken. And we can't do that. That's the work of God. But what we can do is open the door and allow God to do something that we cannot do ourselves. And so, man, thanks, Wes. It's good talk. Really good talk.
Thank you.
If you're watching this today, we're glad that you're with us. This might be super beneficial for you, but you might know someone that this would be beneficial for as well. And so I would encourage you, grab the link to this podcast and share it with them. Send it to them in a text message, and ask them to subscribe to this, as we're going to be talking about more things. We still got more things to come. And so we'll hope you join us for the next episode.